two things just went down that are about to mess with how much we make, how much we spend, and honestly how broke a lot of people might feel in the next few years. America's debt situation just slipped into a danger zone, and at the exact same time, the Federal Reserve quietly dumped $13 billion into the banking system and hit pause on shrinking its balance sheet. That is basically the comeback of easy money. Put those two together and you can see exactly why Trump and Scott Bessent are setting up for a massive drop in interest rates. The old days when the United States could flex a huge industrial base and piles of gold are long gone. Now we've got a debt load that's growing faster than anyone in Washington can keep up with. 25 years ago, the national debt was around $6 trillion. Today, it's over $38 trillion and climbing like crazy after the bailouts of 2008 and the emergency spending in 2020. The curve isn't rising anymore, it's straight up turning vertical. Once interest rates jumped in 2022, the whole thing blew open. Debt costs exploded because all those old cheap bonds matured and had to be replaced with expensive ones. That pushed interest bills past $1 trillion a year, more than defense, more than healthcare, and on track to pass Social Security in a few years. When interest becomes the fastest growing bill in the country, the whole structure starts tilting toward lenders instead of citizens. And no, America can't just walk away from it. A default would blow up the global bond market and wipe out trust in United States treasuries for a generation. That's the backdrop for what Trump and Bessent are trying to do. Their whole game plan is to slam short-term rates as low as possible so the United States can refinance a giant chunk of its debt cheaper. Bessent is flooding the system with 3-month and 6-month bills so investors pile in and push those yields down. If they can drag that rate to 1% or lower, they can roll over huge amounts of debt at a discount. But that only works if the Fed plays along, and Trump has been lining up the people he wants inside the building. Steven Mnuchin supports the plan, Stephen Moore is already on the board, and Trump basically hinted Kevin Hassett might end up running the whole show. A super dovish Fed chair would let rates fall fast without freaking out the markets. But here's the catch. The more the United States depends on short-term debt, the more often it has to be rolled over, and every rollover becomes a trust exercise. If investors ever hesitate, the Treasury needs cash instantly, and the only place to get it is the Federal Reserve printing more money. That's how refinancing problems turn into inflation problems. And we're already seeing price pressure everywhere. Coffee, bananas, bacon, basic stuff cost more than they did a few months ago. Headline inflation is back at 3%, producer prices are climbing, and retail sales only look stable because everyone is paying more for less. Meanwhile, the government is gearing up to slice rates deep in 2026, which will help the debt, but could spark another inflation wave while tariffs are still raising costs. And just as all this is happening, the Fed pumped $13 billion into banks and quietly ended quantitative tightening, leaving more than $2.5 trillion in extra liquidity floating around. Before the pandemic, the balance sheet was under $4 trillion. Now it's stuck above $6.5 trillion with no plans to shrink. That money isn't going anywhere. Once rates drop in 2026, money market funds holding $8 trillion will bolt from earning 3.5% to chasing bigger returns.